Hey guys, today we're driving the Hyundai Santa Cruz and the Ford Maverick. The Santa Cruz is a limited model, just over $41,000 as tested. So this isn't going to be an apples to apples comparison. And this Maverick is the FX4 XLT with a 4K tow package. It's all-wheel drive. It is a 2-liter turbo, about 250 horsepower, 250 pound-feet of torque. Santa Cruz, 8-speed, dual clutch transmission with 270 horsepower out of the 2.5-liter turbocharged engine. This Maverick is actually Charlie's personal truck.
Hey everybody.
And I have not driven this yet, so I'm actually really excited to get behind the wheel. I've only driven a Maverick hybrid, and you've got a couple thousand miles on this already.
Yeah.
You've been enjoying it, doing truck things with it. It's dirty. You've got some landscaping sticks in the bed. You've got a tonneau cover.
Using it for truck things.
Yeah. So you are kind of, I don't know, would you say you were probably the market demographic for this type of truck? You paid about 30 grand for this.
Yeah, I think it's the younger sort of people. I wouldn't really have a use or a need for something large like an F-150, but something like this really suits both myself and my significant other well for mixture daily driving and doing small truck stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's what Ford, they've achieved what they set out to do very well with this truck.
Yeah.
The Santa Cruz, a little bit more of a style statement in my opinion. Looks really cool on the outside, very just sharp and interesting, turns a lot of heads. And the Maverick also has been turning a lot of heads, but these are both new, exciting vehicles. And I don't know, it's interesting to compare them because they are very different. They're about similar in size. I think the Maverick is about 4 inches longer than the Santa Cruz. The Santa Cruz is really only about the same size as a standard mid-size sedan like a Honda Accord or something like that. Looks really good in this black. But the back seats are pretty tight back here. You lose some space. This does only have a 4-foot bed, whereas the Maverick has a 4.5-foot bed.
Yep.
Let's check out
Yeah, a little bit more
here.
claustrophobic in the back of the Santa Cruz. A little bit shallower of a bed as well from a height perspective, if you will, or shorter, I guess the proper term would be. And you lose some here, but
That's
a really
right.
functional bed with the under compartment, which I can see some use to.
Yeah, this is actually really nice. I would, this reminds me a lot of the Honda Ridgeline.
Yep.
But it's not as deep, but still nice to have a little bit of a trunk space.
I can easily see how someone would put straps in there, jumper cables, boots, gloves,
Yeah.
towing equipment.
And
A lot
it's
of
nice and
uses for that.
sealed, so
Yep.
yeah, great. Chicken tenders, whatever.
You do have a drain plug if you wanted to fill that with water.
Yeah.
Cooler. Looks
And-
like you got your storage compartments.
Oh yeah, and you've got a 115 volt, 150 watt AC outlet. That's
Yeah,
great.
150 is a little low for that. That's not
Yeah.
going to power a bunch of tools, but at least it's something.
Sure. And it's protected from the elements. What's on this side? Probably the same thing.
Yep.
Yep, a little more storage there.
A lot of tow hooks too. A
Yeah.
lot of different tie-down points, adjustable.
This does come with this kind of plastic factory bed liner, which is nice.
Do you get that in all Santa Cruzes, even the base? I think you do.
I don't know.
I don't know
Maybe.
if you get the top, but I think you get the bed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have the powered electric rear window, which is great.
And a step.
And a step, that's right. For those who are vertically challenged. And this is your aftermarket.
Yeah, this is a Truxedo Sentry CT cover that we installed. Quite easy, but you can get something from Ford, but it's not like the Santa Cruz that they kind of include it with a package, if you will. It's a dealer accessory.
Okay. And one cool thing with the Maverick is you have these slots built into the bed for kind of partitioning different sections out with 2x4s, which is exactly what you've done here.
Yeah.
And
You could reposition. There are different lengths, but like, so you could do that if you wanted to build a kind of put 3 of them in, one here, one there, and one there, and you could build a shelf, if
oh,
you
nice.
will.
Okay.
So you could have like stuff underneath and stuff on top.
Neat.
You could put them, they have to again be cut differently, but down there, and then if you wanted to put it in front, you could do some sort of like bike rack or whatever.
Sure.
Or
Neat.
take them out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no bed liner in this from the factory, but you're just getting it scratched up as much as possible before you eventually coat it, which it'll need to be scratched up before doing that anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, looks good. I appreciate that you're doing actual truck stuff with this, and it seems like it's, I don't know, this seems like a much larger space to put stuff in, even though it's only another 6 inches larger of a bed. it's a little bit deeper, and it seems like a more functional truck.
Yeah, it's subtle, but there are certain things. For example, you've seen me fit my fat tire mountain bike in the back of this. I wouldn't be able to in the Santa Cruz because of that cover.
Okay.
If the wheel wouldn't go up to the front of the bed.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's blocking a good 8 inches of bed space back there.
I haven't tried it with this cover, but if need be, I could easily just
pull it off. Okay, you're good to go.
Yep.
Neat.
And then you've got, if this were a Lariat, you'd have both of these, but that one you can quick release. No sort of power outlet, but they do have wiring in this one, so Ford will tell you how to install some sort of wiring if you did want to do power, and you can see that these exist.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Neat.
Right there, so you literally already have the plug. So if you bought the like a 12 volt or 110 volt from Ford, you could just put that right in here.
Neat.
Yep. A lot of kind of keep it cheap and accessorize how you want with this truck, whereas that one's a little bit more like prescribed, if you will.
Sure, of course. Yeah. Let's look at the interiors, because that's one point where I really like what Ford did with the Maverick, and I was a little bit disappointed with the Santa Cruz, because the Santa Cruz, it just looks like a Tucson in here, honestly. Really, there's not much going on that's different from the other vehicles in Hyundai's lineup, and the exterior is so radical and different and cool looking. They didn't really do much for the inside.
I think it's mature. I think it's a clean look, but you're right. It doesn't really match the kind of go fun, do life sort of experience that is the outside.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, this is such a radical design. Some people say it looks like an El Camino.
Kind of does.
You know?
A little bit more of that swoop in the rear.
Yep. And the Maverick, it looks like a truck. It's got a cool stance. The tires are pushed out right to the edge of the fender wells. I like the grille on this FX4 package. Like the XLT just looks really sharp.
The difference in sidewall is remarkable as well.
Yeah.
8-inch wheels versus 17s.
Yeah.
The 65 sidewall versus I think 45 on the Santa Cruz.
Let's see what kind of back seat space. I mean, this isn't the largest back seat, but it's definitely a little bit more spacious than the Santa Cruz is. Like, I would be comfortable sitting back here, and at 5'10", my knees are not even really touching the front seats. A much more interesting and exciting interior on the inside of the Maverick, but I don't think it's as high quality of a built interior. Some sharp edges. You haven't had any rattles in this one, but
remarkably, no.
Yeah, the first press car we had a ton of rattles.
This is kind of how we use the truck. You can see we've got shopping bags under there, some towels. A lot of times this seat kind of stays up. We're a two-person household, and if we're going shopping or something, you kind of take this out, do your shopping.
That's a really deep cubby too. That's
nice.
It
is. It's deep. It's functional, and again, kind of going off of what Ford sort of hypes up with this truck, you can get 3D printed elements that go into those little notches.
Okay.
And you could put like an extra set of cup holders back there.
Oh, cool.
Grocery bag hooks. They haven't. The flex bed stuff for that 3D printing is a little gimmicky. I don't think most people are going to use it, but there are kind of those enthusiasts, if you will, that like doing that. And I could see
the people on the truck forums.
Yeah, the truck forums is a good way to say it. I imagine the forums for the Maverick are much more lively than the forums for the Santa Cruz.
You never know. Yeah, and in the back of the Santa Cruz, we do have a little bit of underseat storage too, which is nice.
Yeah.
So actually, that's not a bad cubby. It's about the same size. Yeah.
A little easier to get to, I would say, in the Santa Cruz as well.
Yep. And back here, sat behind myself. Similar legroom. I mean, it's usable. It's just this is kind of a tight, claustrophobic back seat. But again, it is functional and it is usable, but nothing like you would get in any of the comparable crossovers. But maybe that is a sacrifice that you're willing to make for having a truck bed and
it's
a cool
high
looking
windowsill
vehicle
as well. That's what we noticed in the back.
Yeah,
of
it's
this.
very
it
high.
Feels claustrophobic.
Yeah. Now it's a little bit like sitting in the back of our old CX-30. You feel cocooned in there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look under the hoods. So we already talked about powertrain a little bit, but 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. Really nice powertrain in this Santa Cruz. However, I'm not sure how well the dual clutch fits the character and use case of this truck. We'll talk about that more on the road, but just a standard 8-speed automatic in this Maverick, 250 horsepower out of a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. This gets about 30 miles to the gallon on the highway. That gets about 27 or so. And you've kind of
We verified
that in real use scenarios.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, simple.
What are your thoughts on the Santa Cruz after you spent some time in one of these?
I like the Santa Cruz. It's a more, we'll talk a little bit more at the end of the video, I suppose. It's a little bit more of a limited use case, I think. But for those who it would work better for, they're going to like that much better.
There's a little bit more form with the Santa Cruz, a little bit more function with the Maverick, I think.
Yeah.
It says like you've got recovery points, and you've got a tow hitch on this one, whereas the press car on the Santa Cruz doesn't have a tow hitch at all.
Right. And with the FX4 package, you get skid plates underneath and a little bit more. You get these tow hooks, etc.
Okay. The Maverick can tow up to 4,000 pounds. The Santa Cruz can tow up to 5,000 pounds. Yep. Though this Santa Cruz can't tow anything because it doesn't have a hitch, but that's okay. All right, let's take the Maverick for a drive, and maybe we'll move these trucks out of the way so AT&T can fix their cell phone tower. And this bed cover, even though it's nice to have it, it's really hard to
if you were a shorter individual and not super strong, you'd have a tough time. You really would.
Yeah. Maybe need some lube. Who knows? All right, so let's start off by driving the Maverick. We'll get some interior impressions here. Start this up. We already did a full review on the hybrid, and the interior on this is pretty much the same. The difference here is this is going to be the 2-liter turbo with the 8-speed auto. I do really like this interior. Like I said earlier, there are some just quality things. A lot of like sharp edges on some of the panels, and the plastics and everything don't feel that great, but to look at and to kind of soak in visually, this is a much more interesting space, and I really like what Ford did with the design. These cloth seats look really cool. The orange contrast stitching, all the plastics and just the shapes of everything are really interesting and neat. Yeah, right off the bat, this feels so much tighter than the hybrid press car that we had.
That was a pre-production, very well used compressor.
Very much so. You got this pretty early on too in the Maverick. Like after it went on sale, you bought this pretty quickly.
Yep, picked it up off dealer inventory. I know a lot of people watching Maverick content might be waiting for their own Maverick to be delivered, but sometimes you gotta strike while the iron's hot, and we saw this one, no dealer markups. Quick shout out to Matt LaFontaine up in Charlevoix, Michigan for not price gouging.
Yeah. Yeah, we got pretty lucky this year with both of our vehicles.
Yeah, your BRZ at market price as well, or not market price really.
Yeah.
MSRP.
Yeah, I like the way this Maverick drives. It feels lightweight too. It's a lot more light on its feet and a little bit less hefty than the Santa Cruz. And there's a weight difference too. This is about 3,700 pounds with the all-wheel drive, and the Santa Cruz is about a little over 41. I think it's like 4160 something.
Yeah.
So that's a heavy vehicle, and you feel it. But both pretty much drive like crossovers or unibody vehicles. They don't really feel like trucks. They don't ride like trucks, which is kind of nice. I think that's a positive.
Yeah.
You can chuck these things around town a lot easier. You have a little bit more performance on road. They feel a little bit nimbler and more willing to kind of, I don't know, just be usable everyday vehicles as opposed to being a large, cumbersome, full-size truck.
Yep. Yeah, Ford did a good job designing this to still kind of have the broad hood, and much like the Bronco Sport, you feel like you're driving something a little more exciting than it really is.
Yeah.
I think they tuned the engine really well, the transmission well. I think the 8-speed is the best transmission Ford makes in all of their products. It's always where it needs to be. It stumbles a little less than the 10-speed does.
Yes. Yeah, it's just nice to kind of chuck around. It has like a nice small footprint. I mean, this is kind of the spiritual successor to the last gen Ford Ranger, the smaller body Ford Ranger, even though that was a body on frame truck, but these are they have to be about the same size.
Yeah, I think if you're talking total length, obviously you're getting a larger cabin and smaller bed with this than the previous Ranger, but in overall truck size, I think, yeah, you're dealing pretty similar.
Yeah, the old Ranger was a very usable truck. Like, the bed in that was, compared to this, was huge.
Yeah.
You know, it had this really nice small footprint on the road, but pretty big interior too, and you could get them in a stick.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris Brower, substitute Topher, asked me if I could, would I have this in a stick, and I ultimately said no, because the whole point of this vehicle, and I think what Ford did really well, is to keep it simple. And engineering a stick into here would have added cost into the overall design of the vehicle without any real benefit. You're supposed to just have this as an easy to drive, kind of a support your life sort of vehicle, rather than, it's not about the driving experience at
Sure.
the end of the day.
And all 3% of customers would have bought it.
Yep. Do you want to go off-road, or you want to keep them on-road too?
I think we'll keep it on road.
Okay.
Yeah, this is almost bumpy enough to be off-road. So, ride quality is definitely a little bit on the firmer side, but it's not bad. How have you felt like the suspension tuning is, spending some more time with this?
I think you hit it right on the nail right there. It's a little on the firmer side. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel crashy, but it's to the point where, yeah, you take it off-road or anything and it supports you, but it's not quite as cushy as the Santa Cruz.
Yeah, not Ford's best work.
Right. But again, at the price point, it sort of fits the bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is nice to be able to go over larger bumps, potholes, broken road, and feel confident in it.
Yeah, I will say that I do feel like I can go do rugged truck stuff in this Maverick. Like, I can hit a dirt road, I can hit a nice section of bumpy pavement, and just kind of attack it a little bit more in this than I can in the Santa Cruz, which is kind of weird because that's not necessarily something that you would think of on paper, but in reality, I don't know, I feel like this is a more rugged vehicle for some reason. In the Santa Cruz, I want to just kind of tiptoe around the city a little bit more, and I don't have the urge to go hoon off-road at all. Whereas in this, let's go, let's take it, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It's got sidewall, it's got 17-inch wheels instead of 20s, and granted, we do have the top trim Santa Cruz this week, the 20s, and you know, everything's all luxurious and nice. This isn't necessarily the equivalent to the limited Santa Cruz, but
even if you did have an FX4 Lariat top trim Maverick, you'd still get the tow hooks, you'd still get the skid plates,
yes,
the twin tube shocks, those sort of things. There's a simplicity that does work well for the daily lifestyle, the ruggedness of the interior here, a lot of practical storage. Ford really stepped up on the pointless cubbies in this, things like this cubby, this
so
cubby,
many.
this cubby. But I will say we've done things like towing with this truck. We've done working in the backyard, gardening, those sort of things, and having places to put one set of gloves here, one set of gloves there, phone here, other phone, wallet, headlights, everything like that. It is nice to have your silly little places for stuff.
Yeah, and all these cubbies, I appreciate, are lined with rubber on the bottom. You can clean it out easily. You can, you know, stuff isn't rattling around in there all the time, which is really nice. So, little things that Ford has thought of that make this a very usable package, and that adds up over the course of ownership.
It does. And we both obviously drive all of these different cars. The Ranger right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Drive all these different cars week in and week out, and we try to extract ourselves as much from the ownership perspective or any sort of biases or anything. There really is very little that I could complain about this truck. We've had it now for 3 or 4 months, almost 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
Both myself and Alyssa, complaints are minor. She doesn't love having the power adjustable seats and everything. She says it takes 12 pumps for her to get into her position from my position.
Okay.
Coming out of a vehicle like a Tesla where you simply get in with your phone and the whole car adapts to
Press
you.
a button, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that simple. What else?
Yeah, because you guys sold your Model Y and bought this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Power feels good in this.
Yeah, the power is definitely there. The lightness helps.
Yeah, and the 8-speed does all the things that you want it to.
No paddle shifters, which some people have issue with. I am a bit surprised there's no way to tell it which gear you want to be in.
Yeah.
But when you change drive modes, if you were in something like sand, it holds gears very high.
Okay.
So that makes up.
You gotta wait for the Maverick Raptor.
There you go.
Or the
Tremor.
Tremor.
Yep.
ST, whatever they're doing these days.
Yep. She also mentioned that and this is a very kind of specific ownership sort of complaint, but she will hit her pants getting out of the car because it's kind of the way you sort of have to step out from the side sill of the car. But it kind of shows once you start getting to those sort of complaints, it really is pretty minor. And I have to say, a lot of the things the truck doesn't have, I have kind of appreciated, because we did just get out of a car that was very tech heavy. Things like the adaptive cruise control in the Tesla that would sometimes slam on the brakes in the middle of nowhere and beep at you a lot of times. Alyssa would get sick anytime she changed lanes, it would and didn't do the signal right, it would beep at her or yell at her. This truck, it has your standard safety things. We have the Copilot 360, which gives us automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, and a few of those core safety elements. But other than that, this truck doesn't have adaptive cruise control, which I haven't missed. It keeps things really, really simple, and it kind of just works.
You have actual buttons. Do you even use this screen for anything besides CarPlay
just
and
plug
Android
in
Auto?
CarPlay and run.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
You have climate control controls, USB ports, physical buttons for different drive modes, which you probably don't really even need that often.
No.
There's just a few of them.
I've used tow mode, I've used slippery mode before, and people say if you were in a really tough situation, they would help. You can turn your stop-start off. That is a small complaint. You can't turn stability control all the way off, only traction control.
That's right, okay. You probably pull a fuse. Fords always have little fuses that
can.
you can pull out and hoon a bit, but...
You have a hill descent control. I haven't had any use for that.
I've never used hill descent control and liked it in anything.
Right. And another really small complaint is the fan speed, even on one, I feel is a little too loud.
Oh,
it's pretty esoteric, but I am of the belief that one fan speed should be pretty much unheard.
These are things, though, that you can forgive in a sub $30,000 car.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. It is all really minor. At least it still is.
Maverick starts around, what, 20 grand?
Yeah. After destination, you're about 21.
Santa Cruz starts around 24? 25 after destination. So about a $5,000 difference between trims and packages and base models. Let's go drive the Santa Cruz, and let's talk about the interior, because I've got a few gripes.
Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything from the 400-watt plugs, the A's, the C's. I don't know how Ford did it so well that to just think of the little things.
Yeah, it's cool.
You know, even things like these extending, and somehow they did it right.
Yeah. No, I mean, if I had any complaints, it would just be like this plastic steering wheel doesn't feel amazing. But again, not over 30 grand. So many of the other things are so cool about it that you kind of learn to forgive that stuff, and you always just take a file and file down a little bit.
Right.
A little bit of sandpaper.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Things like the sound system's not fantastic, but again, you start making concessions at this price point.
These Pirelli tires look nice and beefy too.
All terrains.
Yeah, they do pretty well in the snow.
They seem to do all right. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Santa Cruz. Let's take this for a drive. So I will preface this by saying I love the way this thing looks on the outside. I think it's super cool. It's super unique. But the inside has been a little bit of a disappointment. And this center stack, this tombstone or whatever you want to call it, it being both touchscreen and gloss black, is a bit of a miss in my opinion. This is already scratched up pretty heavily. You can't see it too well in the cloudy skies that we have today, but in the direct sun there are just swirl marks all over this, and this only has about 5,000 miles on it. So any Santa Cruz with the 2.5 liter turbo comes with this screen.
Yep. And I think even the base trims still have all the piano black around there. So.
They do, yeah. They just have like physical buttons and knobs and dials for climate control. And I don't know if you get a volume tune knob or not. We will probably never ever see a base model Santa Cruz ever in the press fleet, so that's never going to happen. But we do get some really nice features. We have heated and cooled seats, a heated steering wheel. You've got a very simple button layout down here for your all-wheel drive lock, which is basically just a 50-50 torque split front and rear. You've got a hill descent control, parking cameras, 360 view, reverse and forward-facing cameras, which is very nice. These are really high res. They look pretty good too. Pretty standard Hyundai infotainment. Nice responsive screen, but again, kind of a bummer that all this is touch. But honestly, not a huge deal. You kind of get used to it after a few days. Not as bad as some of the worst offenders in the industry with touch-only buttons. This reminds me a little bit of the original Chevy Volt screen.
Yep.
But
yeah, this is a timely review as well, because I actually just spent 600 miles in a Tucson with the exact same layout. So I got to spend some time, daytime, nighttime. I will say the climate control I never got used to. It's still, if I were driving and then wanted to adjust the temperature, there's no good way to tell kind of which. You really got to just pay attention to which one you're tapping on.
There's nothing to brace your hand onto, and when you're bouncing around in motion,
That's exactly
this is
what it
all
was.
these buttons are too close together, and it's all vague. So.
People often think the haptic touch button thing is just a journalist complaint, but you got to realize if you have real buttons, you can hold your finger on it and then kind of make sure you're on the right spot, and then while you're bouncing around, like you just said, you can press it.
Yeah.
And it's subtle. It wasn't often that it happened, but it did happen.
I'm just not sure that the design of this interior is a cohesive look for what the exterior does for people emotionally. I don't know. It's okay.
For me, I like it. I think it's a really mature, handsome design. I think it's sleek. I overall like the interior layout of this. I like where they put the heated and cooled seats. I could do without the haptic, without the touch sensitive button. You got your wireless device charging down there. Yeah. Down there on the side. And
there's a little bit of decent storage in this too. You've got pockets here on the door handles, down there. Down here there's some nice cubbies and open spaces. I do like this 8-speed dual clutch. I know you're not as much of a fan with it. I think philosophically it's cool and bad that they fitted this car with a dual clutch. It kind of reminds me of like, okay, you've got paddle shifters, you've got a sport drive mode. Think of this as like a truck rally car. I mean, it's got some performance.
This truck really hustles.
Yeah, it does. Let's put us into sport mode, wherever my drive mode selector is. There we go. And we'll hit it. Nice hard shifts.
Because of the structural rigidity that the bed layout and kind of splitting the cabin in the middle provides, this thing is much more rigid than the Tucson, of which it's based, and you can really, really hustle it.
Yeah, think rally truck.
Yeah. Sounds pretty good for what it is.
Yeah, it's fine.
Nope, straight.
Oh, no. But if you're going to be towing with this, if you're going to be driving around the city a lot, the fact that this is a dual clutch, you're going to get some clutch slip off the line, maybe lining up to a trailer or, going off-road. Having a DCT isn't necessarily the best option. But I will say, as DCTs go, this 8-speed is nice. It's not as aggressive as a lot of the N products, so it's a lot smoother. I think Hyundai did a pretty good job tuning it. It's just, would I have preferred a standard 8-speed automatic? Depends on how you're going to be using it. I think for most people it'll be fine, because I doubt many are going to be really using this for truck things.
The wet clutch DCT is really well engineered, and the first time I drove it in the Sonata, I loved it. I've driven it in the Elantra N line, I love it, and the Kona N, the Veloster N, it's good in all those products. I do think this application, it's a bit of a shame, and part of that is that conventional transmissions have gotten so good. You see things like the ZF 8-speed and Ford's 8-speed. You no longer need to have a dual clutch just to get fairly responsive shifts and a peppy powertrain, if you will. And yeah, when we had the Santa Cruz, we were doing things like pulling in and out of our garage, and those slow speed maneuvers, just a little bit less smooth. You feel a little bit of that just very subtle clunk and delay as you're maneuvering things around, which again, in a Veloster N, you'd never notice, because how often are you backing your Veloster N up to a trailer?
That's right. Yeah. Ride quality in the Santa Cruz it's better than the Maverick.
It is.
It's a lot smoother over bumps. It kind of just steamrolls over everything. You've got more weight. It feels a little bit heftier. Definitely more luxurious. Definitely nicer. I mean, this feels like a $5,000 more expensive vehicle. Though in this top trim for 40 grand, that's a lot of money. I don't know if I'd want to spend 40 grand on a Santa Cruz, but some people I'm sure will.
It reminds me of the argument back and forth whenever we review a Ridgeline. Ridgelines are typically a little bit more expensive than your comparable Frontier or Tacoma or something, but you are getting something for that money. It is a nicer riding experience. It is a more mature, a more elevated product. And I do think for the right buyer, this is a much better choice than the Maverick.
Yeah, especially if you want something a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more premium. And you're right, this interior does really speak to that.
Still no rattles in here. This is a $5,000 car, or 5,000 mile car that's presumably 5,000 hard miles.
Yeah.
And it's still nicely put together. Seems to be holding up. I'm a bit surprised you don't get a power retractable or power sliding rear window like you see in a lot of the larger trucks, but it's pretty small. You can reach back there. We both seem to have a good amount of room here. We have both elbows.
Oh yeah, front space is fantastic. I like this felt line around the side. Like that's one of my favorite features of this interior, is that just kind of adds a cool, funky element.
If we were going to drive cross country, we'd take the keys to this hands down.
For sure.
It's going to be a quieter, nicer driving experience. And yes, the Lariat Maverick would have a little bit more sound isolation, but I can't imagine it would be quieter than this.
I wouldn't want to take this off-road necessarily. I wouldn't be as willing to take it off-road as I would in the Maverick. But you're right, as a truck to do car things in, this is probably the clear choice. But as a car-based truck to do truck things in, the Maverick is, I think, probably the clear winner.
Yeah. When I saw them both on paper, I drove the Santa Cruz first, and I thought the Santa Cruz was excellent. There's no way Ford would have any sort of answer to it. How could it? I think the Santa Cruz looked better, it drives great, and provides everything you need, but there is something about that real world sort of use. It's the same reason why you own a 200-some thousand mile 4Runner rather than some new Jeep or something like that, and you love that 4Runner. It's still that simplicity that really speaks to a lot of people. And I think in the day and age where the average car transaction is 45 grand, we sort of think that everyone needs the heated and cooled seats, and not only needs but wants all that, wants the 360-degree camera. But when you really actually look down at everything, you're kind of like, you can be happy with less in a lot of ways.
Yeah, sure. However, looking at that 4Runner Limited four-wheel drive in the garage with their memory seating positions and the leather and the JBL sound system, that is really enticing. But is it worth twice what I paid or what I have into my 4Runner? I could care less.
Exactly.
So
no, the Santa Cruz is not a lose. It is a good truck.
It is a good car truck, yes.
Yeah.
I just, I think after spending a little bit more time with this, I do like it the more I've driven it. It is just a fantastic vehicle to daily drive. And can you get this powertrain in the Tucson? You can get it in some other Hyundais.
Tucson N-Line, maybe?
Yeah.
I think they make a Tucson N-Line that you can get it in.
It is sporting. It is quick. And maybe it's not as engaging as I would like, but it is quick. But yeah, this is a fun option. It's cool to look at. It gets a lot of attention. It's something funky and different, and I think that's going to appeal to a lot of people. And the Maverick is just a great small truck option in a market without a lot of small trucks anymore. I mean, they've pretty much vanished. There's this, there's that. That's it.
Yeah. Everything else is large.
Yeah.
It is cool to have two very different options, and they can both exist on the market. It's not like sort of the mid-sized truck options where you're like, why would you buy X over Y?
Yes. Any other final thoughts? That'll kind of wrap things up. I like the smoked chrome grille on this.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Very sharp.
Some people have said to me they think the Santa Cruz looks will fade quicker, like it's almost like an anime character or something. It's a little too much, but I do think it does look cool.
Yeah. Are you going to put a lift on your Maverick?
Probably not. I'm more fuel economy interested, but I could see the argument. Lift it up 2 inches, get a little more ground clearance.
In Michigan, we don't need lifts. We don't have hills.
Yeah. I do want to put it up on the quick jack and kind of see how thick those skid plates seem. They do seem like they provide some function. I mean, they're metal and they don't go the whole length or anything.
Oh yeah, but those are, I don't know, 1/8 inch thick, 1/4 inch thick.
Yeah, enough to keep small sticks or anything from jamming in the wrong place.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will be happy with either. I think this is a little bit more for the masses. This is going to be a little bit more for your specific type of buyer. This is a a Civic to a Civic Type R or something.
This has some very California surfer vibes.
That's what they were going
to
for.
me. I mean, Santa Cruz, you know, and yeah, I think that sums up things nicely. Check out Charlie's channel, Daily Motor, if you haven't already. Lots of videos on his Maverick, and I'm sure lots more coming. Thanks for helping out with this review today.
Absolutely.
We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.